We are going to get started in just a few minutes, but I wanted to let you know that the slides are available here by QR code if you like to be able to follow along. And then for those of you that are joining via the live stream, we will put a link to the slides in English and Spanish in the description of the video after the evening is over. All right, I think we'll go ahead. Oh, I need this clicker. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I am Rebecca Atkins, and I am the Director of Counseling. And we have with us tonight a group of counselors that will be leading our presentation. And then we also have with us Danae Solar from UNC, who works in the financial aid office, and she'll be taking your questions and helping us to answer them following the presentation. So Tonight, we will be giving you a broad overview of financial aid in college application and thinking through kind of what are different sources of financial aid and paying for college. That's why we call it paying for college night, because it usually is piecing together different sources to be able to pay for the school that your child has selected. So now I'd like to welcome Cherie Manning from East Chapel Hill High.
All right, good evening, everybody. Like Ms. Atkins said, I'm Cherie Manning Cook. I am one of the counselors at East Chapel Hill High, and I am really going to open up the presentation talking about some myths related to financial aid, and then I'll also kind of give you like a brief overview or a brief definition of what exactly financial aid is. So the first myth that we really want to address is the myth that the FAFSA takes an extremely long time to complete and that it is very involved. In reality, the FAFSA is not that difficult to complete, and it's really a short process. It normally takes less than 30 minutes. 30 minutes if you are not quite as technologically advanced, but now there are a lot of tools available on the FAFSA website. Like the IRS data retrieval tool that makes entering your information so much quicker and so much easier. You don't have to put that information in. I think you took the clicker. Okay, so our second myth that I really want to talk about is the myth of financial aid or just being free money. In actuality, your financial aid package does consist of some things that are free money, but there are also other things like scholarships, loans, grants, different things that come, and they all work together to create what is considered financial aid, what the colleges refer to when they're talking about financial aid. So no, financial aid is not always free money, but free money is a part of what financial aid can be. So, and another myth, and this is a myth that is one that is very common, is that students feel like they don't have to apply for financial aid because they think that their parents make too much money. In reality, anybody can apply for financial aid, and you are awarded financial aid based on quite a few things. It's not only solely based on how much money your parents make. And then also you have to remember that there are some scholarship programs that require you to even apply for financial aid before you will be deemed eligible for that particular scholarship program. So we encourage every single student to apply for financial aid no matter what their family's income is. And so our next myth is about when to complete the FAFSA. And so a lot of people think that you have to wait until, I pushed it, it didn't go? Oh, okay. There we go. Sorry. A lot of people think that you have to wait until you have completed your college applications to complete your FAFSA. In actuality, you can complete your FAFSA as early as October 1st. So if you know that you are going to apply for a school, you can go ahead and do your financial aid. If you're still trying to decide where you want to go, what program you want to study, don't wait because your financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis. So you want to make sure that you are applying for financial aid as early as possible. And a part of your FAFSA is adding the school that you plan to attend, but you're able to add up to 10 schools on your FAFSA. So if you're still trying to figure out where you want to attend, you can go ahead and apply and put every school that you plan to apply to into your FAFSA. And what will happen is you'll start to get financial aid packages from those schools, and that can even help you make your decision about what school to attend. This clicker is giving me a hard time, you guys. So the last myth that I want to talk about is about your status when it comes to being a citizen. And a lot of people think that financial aid is only available to U.S. citizens, when in actuality, that is not true. So a student's parent citizenship has no effect on their financial aid. In fact, you can fill out your FAFSA and there's not even a question asking whether or not you are a U.S. citizen on there. So you can go ahead and apply for financial aid, and it just uses your income tax information to help to determine what you get for that. And as we all know, if you work in the United States, you pay taxes either through a Social Security number or a tax ID number. So you'll be able to apply for financial aid. Okay, so I keep talking about financial aid, and what I want to do is to make sure that we all have a basic understanding of the definition of financial aid. And so financial aid are basically described or defined as funds provided to students and their families to help pay for post-secondary expenses. And when you're thinking about financial aid, as I said in the very beginning, there are different types of financial aid. And so when you're thinking about the types of financial aid, you want to think about them kind of in two main categories, but four different things that fall under those two categories. So the first category of financial aid that you want to think about is self-help aid. And that's basically aid where you are doing something to receive the aid that will help you pay for school. So for example, like a student loan falls under self-help aid. Work study falls under self-help aid. And a little bit later, you'll get some better definitions of these terms. But like student loans, you have to complete a loan application and you eventually have to pay that money back. And then work study, you are working at a job at your college or university, and you are receiving those funds to help offset your college expenses. And then the second category of financial aid is gift aid, which is basically your free things that you don't have to pay back. You meet a certain qualification and you're able to get this free money. And so one main category of free aid is scholarships. And so those things can be awarded, need-based, so based on income and how much money you make or how much need you have, the gap between the cost of attendance and your financial aid. And then there are also merit-based scholarships, and those are based solely on how you perform academically. And then the last type of gift aid that I really want to talk about is grants. And grants are just kind of free money that you get from the government, that you may get from some other organizations just for completing that basic application. Is free money. You use it to help offset your costs. Okay. I'm going to pass it over to Matt from Phoenix Academy, and he'll take over from here. He keeps getting stuck.
Got to click it early.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. And my name is Matt Harkey. I'm another one of the counselors in the district. I will be going over, for the most part in my section of the presentation, the different sources of financial aid. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I think we're queued up. You're going to have a variety of sources here, from federal and state government sources to the colleges and universities themselves, to employers, both of students and of parents, and then out to private sources as well. Federal and state government aid is usually going to come mostly from the FAFSA, so we won't have a separate slide for that here, but we will talk about some of these other sources of aid. Okay, so you can see that this college and university aid is very school-specific. There's usually both merit and need-based aid, and aid of all the different types that we just reviewed that's administered by individual schools. Sometimes schools are going to just use the information from the FAFSA, no additional paperwork or information requested, while sometimes there's going to be a separate application for some of their sources of aid. And the deadlines and requirements for any of this additional paperwork is going to vary by school. So this is why one of the critical steps in all students' financial aid search and scholarship searches is to double check the financial aid information for each school to which they're applying. So you're going to want to go to those schools' websites, find something talking about money, pay, afford, scholarships, financial aid, and do your homework. Make sure you're not missing any of the details with what they're asking you for and the different opportunities that are out there for you. All right, now with need-based awards, some good questions to consider as you're researching and thinking about schools' financial aid packages and opportunities, and even when you're speaking with school representatives, is whether or not their aid meets all demonstrated need, what factors are under consideration, and how that aid is dispersed over the years of enrollment. For example, is this like a one-time award just that freshman year, or is it something recurring and renewable that's awarded annually? And when you hear about the merit-based aid, that type of aid, this is what is not going to consider the financial need. Even though they may still oddly ask for the FAFSA, which is going to illustrate some of that financial aid information, the merit-based aid, those are the sources that are not going to consider financial need. Okay, now on to private sources. This is a huge umbrella. So from an individual who has set up a scholarship fund to local groups, which we'll get into a big one here in Chapel Hill soon, to big national organizations as well. And with these private sources that are all over the place, the best thing you can do is be organized and meticulous with this component of your scholarship search. You're going to want to review the school and district listings here within Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, as well as expanding out to those general internet searches, and we'll talk more about that. So on that note, we do have a district scholarship listing that your school counselors can link you up with, and this is curated, and we ask students to review this before the giant, big general internet searches, because in this listing, we're going to have information about certain local scholarships that may not be found anywhere else. They may not even have a website. It may be paperwork that's delivered to the school counselor at the school. Reviewing this listing and investigating that school-specific aid at individual schools, those are kind of those two critical first steps before you start spending time on the broad, general internet searches. Generally, you shouldn't ever be paying to play for financial aid information. So if you're ever getting something in the mail, getting an email that you're skeptical of, suspicious of, they're saying that it's going to cost a fee to apply for a scholarship or to submit your FAFSA, that can be a scam. So generally, you shouldn't be paying for this type of stuff, even though we're going to talk about a specific CSS profile form here on the next slide that is legitimate. So generally, you shouldn't be paying for this information, paying for these opportunities. Always contact your student school counselor if you have any uncertainty about a source of aid or that information. And throughout the process, just be sure you're being safe with all your personal information. Make sure that you're on the official .gov websites for the FAFSA and the student aid site. Make sure you're keeping those passwords safe. Don't share any of your financial information with somebody calling you on the phone out of the blue. Now, like I said, this CSS profile, this is one that has a fee, even though they do have fee waivers. Some schools request this form in addition to the FAFSA as an additional assessment that helps them get an even more thorough picture of your family's financial needs than the FAFSA alone. So you can speak with your counselor about eligibility for those fee waivers for this if your student is applying to one of those schools who are requesting it, and if that's a concern or a need for your family. Now, one big private source of aid, of funding that we want to touch on here for a few slides is our local public school foundation. So the CHCCS Public School Foundation is the biggest source of local scholarships, and these are the scholarships where you're only competing against other students in the district. It's not against hundreds of thousands of students across the country. It is just the other class of 2026 here in Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools. So you can see that there's a variety of criteria that are considered for these local scholarships. And again, there are at least 19 of these local awards where you are only competing against other students in the district. Some of these are going to be merit-based, some of these are going to be need-based, some a blend of both. And they'll be awarded based on anything from academics to extracurriculars to both of those things and more. Definitely check out their website, see their table if there's one out there in the lobby after our presentation, and lean on this listing within that district listing, a big highlight of these local scholarships where the competition is just less. So we will say that tens of thousands of dollars are awarded annually from the Public School Foundation, and unfortunately, sometimes there are just really few applicants for these awards. So we just emphasize to students over and over again, don't leave money sitting on the table. You might be one of only a few students that were motivated enough to get that application in. Again, 19 or more awards, tens of thousands of dollars where it is only competing against other students in the district. Be sure you review all of those Public School Foundation scholarship opportunities. Now, that said, those applications aren't going to open until the spring, so not going to open until February 1st. Sorry, it looks like I'm a couple slides behind, but be sure to review their website. Okay, sorry about that. Now, for the employer-based scholarships, this is something where both students and parents, be sure that you're researching and asking your employer, whether it's your part-time job as a student or your job as a parent, make sure you're inquiring with your employer, are there any types of opportunities available? And just do that research, ask those questions within your place of work. Now, hopefully, everyone is aware that it is College Application Week. So during this week, across the state, participating schools are waiving their application fees to all applicants who apply via cfnc.org. So that does mean keeping track of some applications and transcript requests via CFNC, in addition to whatever you've got going on via Common App and Naviance. But this is, again, money saved. It can be worth that little bit of extra organization. And your school counselor can provide you with this information of the participating schools. This slideshow will be published, of course, as well. And I think next I'm handing it over to Ms. Royal, who's going to talk to you about the FAFSA.
Thank you. My name is Julia Royal, and I'm one of the school counselors at Chapel Hill High School. Thank you all for being here this evening. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the FAFSA. So it's called the Better FAFSA. I was actually going to ask the group, how many of you have actually filed a FAFSA before? Raise your hand. How many of you filed a FAFSA within the last couple years? Okay, so the FAFSA has changed. The FAFSA that you may have known has changed many times, or if you have an older student, the last 2 years they completely redid the FAFSA and created a whole new FAFSA. So they call it the Better FAFSA, but I do believe it's actually better. And you all are lucky because they've worked out a lot of the kinks the last few years. So it's running a lot more smoothly this year, and the reason it's better is it's a lot faster to fill out. They were mentioning earlier about a myth of the FAFSA taking forever. Well, now the FAFSA actually links to the IRS and pulls your data in most of the time, and it's pretty short. So FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. So it's a form filled out that goes to the federal student aid office, and then a student aid index number is created from that form. The student aid index number is an index number. It is not a dollar amount. Sometimes people think that it's a dollar amount. That number is then sent to the colleges that your student indicates when they fill out the FAFSA. They use the SAI or student aid index number in order to determine what aid your student might be eligible for. The application is in Spanish and in English on the website, so you can switch it over to Spanish if that is preferred. Normally, the FAFSA opens at the beginning of October. I think it opened a little early this year, which is awesome. And as far as deadlines, that varies on the college. So FAFSA deadlines, you just kind of need to pay attention, the individual universities. But I will say that earlier is better. There are some monies that run out. And so it is better or preferable to fill out the FAFSA. I would recommend no later, maybe the end of December. But again, I would check with colleges on what they recommend. You can fill them out a lot of times all the way through the springtime for community college, even into the summer. So it just depends on the college. All right, so the new FAFSA, the better FAFSA, is role-based completion. It used to be one application that was kind of completed together jointly. It is no longer that way. So it starts with the student. They complete their part. They invite their contributors, which is usually a parent or two, and then they complete their part with a separate login. The nice thing about this is that the student and parent don't have to be together to complete it. The student can do their part, and then they can pass it on to their parent. And a lot of parents kind of worry about sharing their information with their students. They don't trust that their student might, accidentally lose their social or something like that. You don't have to worry about that anymore because the student simply invites you and you're going to put all that information in. All right, so speaking of the student's role, the student basically will answer a series of questions. They will put in their education. They're going to put in their income information if they have any. They're also going to put in a list of colleges that they're applying to that they want the FSA ID or Federal Student Aid Index number to go to. And then, of course, they will invite their contributors. So who can be a contributor? It could be a parent, it could be a spouse if they have one. Keep in mind that this is for all ages, can fill out the FAFSA. So now, how do you know? Common question is, who's the parent? Who's considered a parent? Especially if you live in separate households, or it's a guardian situation, or you live with a grandparent. What I had to say is that there are a series of questions in the FAFSA that the student completes, and it pretty much helps them figure that out as they go through the questions. It's pretty straightforward. If you're confused or have concern about that, you can talk to school counselor or even reach out to a financial aid office at one of the universities you're applying to. But I will say for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. But how they answer the question determines who they're going to invite as their contributor based on the questions. All right, so every person that fills out the FAFSA, the student and the contributors, will have an FSA ID number. This is basically your user information. I don't know why it has a fancy name, but it does. So this is your user login information, your user login name. But anyway, you guys will fill that out. The student will have one, and the parent or other contributors will have one. Will say you do not have to have a social security, you do not have to have a social security number to be a contributor. The student does have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. This is listed in there, so you can look up what would be considered an eligible non-citizen, but examples would be like a refugee or a permanent resident. The parent, though, on the other hand, does not have to be a legal citizen. They don't even have to have a social security number. Now, I will say that they do have to have filed taxes. So keep that in mind. The parent needs to have filed taxes. Make sure. You're right, it lags. Where am I at? Contributor data. I'm so sorry, y'all. These slides are not keeping up with me. All right, contributor data is just to keep in mind that, again, all that the student needs to invite their contributor is their name and their email address. That's it. And then it will go to you. You'll get an email invite, and then you can do your part. You can create your own ID number and user information and create your part and submit. The application is not considered complete until all of the contributors have submitted. And I will, having done a lot of FAFSAs with people, I'll tell you one of the hangups I see the most often is that how the student writes their parent's name has to match exactly how the parent puts their name in their account. So if you have two last names and the student puts a hyphen and you don't, it might not match up and there'll be a problem. If the student adds, believe it or not, an extra space after your name and you do not, it might not match up. So that is the one thing you do want to communicate clearly with your student on to make sure that you don't have any problems with that. And on that same note, the other common snag that I sometimes see is just the parent account getting set up, especially if you've submitted FAFSA before. So sometimes that can be a little, take a little bit longer to get you in and kind of verify your ID, but I will tell you it does work. Sometimes you have to be a little patient with that piece, but the rest of the application, once you're in, is actually pretty straightforward and pretty easy for the most part. And before I pass it on, I would just reiterate, please reach out to your financial aid offices at your universities where you're applying. They're happy to answer questions if you get stuck on these questions. And then your high school counselor can answer some of the FAFSA questions if they're kind of general. And I'm going to pass this off. All right.
All right, how y'all doing today? Just going to go over briefly on some of the ways to apply. First off, my name is Kareem Taylor. I'm one of the counselors at Carrboro High School. We're going to talk about ways to apply. With regards to how to apply, FAFSA on the web, you can use your mobile app, your mobile phone. You can apply via the mobile app. Also, there is a PDF copy on the FAFSA website. You can apply PDF copy, and you can type into the PDF copy as well. FAFSA on the phone. Also, FAA access to CPS online. You can apply via that as well. Also, get this. Now, going back, you can complete it now. If you got your FAFSA FSA ID, student and all contributors must create one, okay? Used for FAFSA completion and allows access to certain U.S. Department of Education websites. So please keep in mind, if you have more than one student in college, you can use the same FSA ID for all students. So keep that in mind. And also, only one owner should create the FSA ID. All right, once you create the FSA ID and you go through the whole process, you will get a student aid index. What is a student aid index? It's an eligibility index number that a college or career school's financial aid office uses to determine how much federal student aid the student would receive if the student attended that school. That's the SAI index. Okay. Now, is my parent a contributor when I fill out my FAFSA form? All right. Now, FAFSA pretty much defines a parent. Means your legal, biological, adoptive parent or person that the state has determined to be your legal parent. That's what defines a parent contributor. All right. Also, you can answer these two questions that you see here. Are you a biological adoptive parent married to each other? Do your biological adoptive parent lives together? If you answer yes to the first two questions, then both parents are contributors. Just FYI. All right, next slide. All right. Now, did one parent provide more financial support than the other over the past 12 months? So if you're the parent and the child lives with you in the house and you provide financial support for the past school year, then you're defined as a contributor. All right. Now, someone who lives out of state may not qualify, but at the same time, there are tools within the FAFSA website that help you identify who is a contributor, FYI on that as well. Then once you like go through that whole process. You will get a FAFSA submission summary here. It will have the date that the application was accepted, and also it will provide you with the date when the application was processed. So you got different. Let me fix this mic. You got the federal Prayer Grant. All right, it will show up on the summary report. Then you got the direct loans and federal work study if your student is eligible for the work study. And you will see all of this on your financial aid summary report, and that's pretty much it. All right, the institutional student information report. Now, this information gets sent directly to the colleges. Now, once the colleges receive this information, they pretty much to see how much money and things that may be distributed to you and your student. All right, so you really don't want to miss out on this, so you want to make sure all the information that you send out is correct, all right, because you will get information sent back to you with pretty much how much money that your student has received. Now, I know a lot of things happen throughout the year. You got a lot of kids and different things like that. You got your student in school. You got a move-in date. You want to make sure your student have what you want to call it, a roommate. You can miss some things, all right? So if you want to, think about making any type of corrections there, you can make corrections via your FAFSA website using your FSA ID. You can update with the paper copy, student aid report as well, and you can submit documents straight to your college or university that your student will be attending, okay? I find that easiest because you get a real direct person that you can talk to, and you can submit directly to the college or university. You can call FAFSA. I don't know how long the wait time is, but in my experience, when I call directly to the school, I get a faster response. So keep that in mind. We're making corrections. All right. Now, they'll, this thing ain't working, Rebecca. Oh, there it is. All right. Now, also, there may be some special circumstances, which is fine. That could be anything that ranges from divorce, loss of employment, like more than one student in college, things of that nature. So there are special circumstances. Now, you can send a written explanation to the financial aid office to your college or university. Like I said, I believe that's the best route to go because it puts you in direct contact and they can work out the nuances with them. Now, once you provide information to the college or university, now they will review your information and pretty much what they say is the final decision. Now, I don't know as far as the appeal process, how that go, but what is written in stone is pretty much this is the final decisions based on if you have any special circumstances and you try to appeal the whole process. All right. All right. Now, here are some of the resources here. Like I said, all this information is on the website. Like I said, changes for multiple families, better FAFSA for mixed status families, and FAFSA assistance. If you need FAFSA assistance, please click on the link, and I'm telling you, it's more information there that you can think of, and it can answer any questions to to the best of your ability. And like I said, the quicker you do it, the better off you are with the FAFSA. I'm sorry. The name? Oh, I'm sorry. What's the name? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You got it.
Okay, those stairs make me nervous. All right, thank you to our school counselors for leading this discussion tonight. I am now happy to welcome Danae Solar from UNC Chapel Hill Financial Aid Office to take your Q&A. We have a microphone set up here that we'll use for the Q&A as we're in a larger space. We also have the live stream. And Ms. Solar is bilingual, and so you can ask your questions in English or Spanish. Hi, y'all.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for answering our questions. Mine has to do with I think it's the CSS, because I believe UNC also requires FAFSA and CSS.
Yeah.
And so my first question is that something like the FAFSA where we fill it out in advance, or do we wait for the school to prompt us?
So the CSS profile is another type of application, like our counselors mentioned. It opened on October 1st, so you can go ahead and fill it out. At least for UNC specifically, it's better to have it earlier, because we do have some merit-based scholarships that need components to it, so that allows you to give us like as much consideration as possible. So the earlier the better. I would say in my experience, do look at the deadlines between the schools that you are applying to. For us, we're a little bit later on the year. If you do want consideration for merit-based, we want it by early December. Okay. So keep that in mind. But a lot of schools also say, like, submit it with your application. So it varies from school to school. I will always say the earlier the better, to be on the safe side.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier too about all colleges have different deadlines and different expectations. And so sometimes people will come to us and say, what is this? What is that? And we're always going to say, go check your college website, because we don't want to accidentally tell you the wrong thing. Maybe last year it was one thing and this year it's something different. So you might want to start a spreadsheet or a list somewhere about which colleges have which deadlines and which parts they require for you to turn in.
Especially if you're applying to colleges, either early action or early decision, they may want those a little earlier to give you your financial aid offer with your admissions decision.
Would you talk a little bit about early action versus early decision?
Absolutely. So early action is essentially when you apply to a college early and they give you the decision early. For example, if you apply to UNC by October 15, you're going to hear about it somewhere end of December. Early decision, on the other hand, you can only apply to one single school early decision. That's because it's a binding agreement, meaning that if you are accepted into an early decision school, you're saying, I will attend. So if you're applying early decision, it is a very important thing to think about all those aspects. Are you okay with this being the only school that you're applying to? Early decision schools tend to be more your privates. I don't think I have ever seen a public institution be early decision. UNC is only early action. So do keep that in mind, that difference of that binding aspect. Your counselor has to sign off on it as well. So it is important to do those considerations. Some students will apply if there's like their super top choice, especially if they want more consideration for merit-based scholarships. Sometimes they have a little bit of a more input in those early actions or early decision rounds.
Other questions?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question regarding the shutdown and how is that affecting the FAFSA application?
Currently, there's no issues with it. It's working as usual. That department has continued to work despite the shutdown, and we're still receiving payments. We're still sending payments because we are essentially providing those funds. So at this point, there's no effect on it. We do have, at least in our website, updates. So if anything does end up happening, we will definitely let our families know. But at this point, there's no concern on that regard.
So is it necessary for student to or the parents to apply for FAFSA, or it's optional?
For the FAFSA?
Mm-hmm.
So FAFSA is required if you want consideration for financial aid at all, whether that is institutional or merit-based scholarships. If you don't submit it, and this will depend with every single school works differently, so it's really important that you talk to those universities. I can speak about UNC specifically. We will review the student for merit-based scholarships without a FAFSA. It's just less scholarships because we're not gonna consider them for the ones that have a need factor to it. So while they don't need them, your options are better if you're able to submit it.
Okay, for parents' financial aspects, what are the decision-making points that you think can impact a student's ability to get any scholarship or financial aid?
In terms of merit-based or need-based?
Either or both.
Either or. So need-based is really dependent on the specific family circumstances, because the federal formula and the institutional formula as well take into account very many things, right? It's your family size, it's your income, it's your assets, it's a lot of things that make it change and go up or go down, right? So there's not like an income threshold or an asset threshold, it's just about your personal family circumstances, right? So that's a little bit more of, we will have to see the application to tell you how it varies. Generally speaking, the higher income, the higher the assets, the lower the family size, the less eligibility for need financial aid. You will always have eligibility for loans as long as you submit a FAFSA. That is your prerogative. The student will always have that option. In terms of merit-based, it will depend on the scholarship. If they have a need-based component, of course, we're going to look at the FAFSA, we're going to look at the CSS profile and make that determination from there. But there are others that we will only look at the criteria from an academic standing point, and we're never going to look at financial components for it.
Okay, so scholarship just look at the FAFSA component as well.
There are some that do, because they have a need component in terms of, like, we want students that are low income or that are for a very particular categories or populations that we're looking for to fulfill those criteria in the scholarship.
So does it make a difference, like who is getting FAFSA and how much, and do the colleges take into consideration when they are selecting a candidate for any particular coursework?
I would say most of our scholarships don't have a need-based component, is the minority in them. Most of them are just merit-based. So keep that in mind. There are some, but there's not the majority of them.
FAFSA is included in admission? Yeah, I mean, does that impact? Yeah, I think the question was, does the financial aid impact admission to the college?
No. I would say this. Depends on the school. If we are need blind, which we are need blind, then we don't look at your financial aid until you're accepted. Otherwise, there are some institutions that are need aware, in which case they will look at your financial information before making a decision.
I have a quick question. Like for the FAFSA thing, like if the one parent is making much and the other parent less, who's gonna be the one filing for it?
So in terms of contributors for the FAFSA, if your parents are separated, the parent that provides the most financial support is going to be the contributor for the FAFSA, regardless of how much they make. If they, let's say, contribute 50-50, at that point, it would be the parent that makes the most money. But it will depend, it initially goes based off who provides the most financial support for the student.
Okay, if the one that is providing, like, the one that is providing more, like, has a low income, doesn't matter what you, like, will you have higher grants from the FAFSA?
So if the parent that let me make sure I understand. If the parent that provides the most financial support is the one that makes less income, correct?
Yes.
Then you just put their information in, and we'll go from there. The FAFSA will let you know what parent you need to put. But it sounds like in this case, it'll be that parent, and there's no other information that we will need. The school will let you know if other documentation will be required after.
Thank
Other questions? Yes.
Does UNC commit itself to covering 100% of the need? And do you know, is that pretty typical across like universities as well these days?
UNC does cover 100% of need, demonstrated need, for all students. Now, the important thing is to understand what demonstrated need means. In financial aid, that usually will mean university's cost of attendance minus SAI. That's usually what the demonstrated or calculated need will mean. And at least at UNC, we will. There are other institutions that do the same. Not everybody does. And it's not like standard of all public schools meet 100% of need. It does vary very much depending on the institution. I would say bigger schools that you know that name of will likely be able to provide more financial aid than a smaller school, of course, just due to their endowment and things like that. But if you want to know their policy, reach out to their financial aid office. They will definitely let you know.
So what all documents needs to be submitted when somebody is submitting a FAFSA application?
Can you repeat that?
What are the documents that needs to be submitted?
Documents required. So the FAFSA will automatically, 99% of the time, get your information directly from the IRS. So you don't need anything other than your asset information. And to put this out there, assets for the FAFSA do not include your home of residence, and they do not include your retirement accounts. So that information you don't have to include. If you have done your FAFSA and you include it, reach out to the schools that you're applying to. We can fix that for you. And if the FAFSA, for some reason or another, is not able to pull the record directly from the IRS, we will need 2 year prior, so prior year taxes. You're applying for 26, 27, we're gonna need 2024 taxes.
And how about the assets? If somebody has asset and provide the asset information, what kind of documentation are required?
It's just the value of the assets, there's nothing else. So let's say like stocks and things like that, money markets, 529 accounts, that sort of thing. And the FAFSA is great at having little bubbles next to it to let you know what counts as an asset. But it's just the amount. You don't need to provide any hard documentation for it or anything.
And does the information needs to be updated every year?
The FAFSA does have to be submitted every year to continue to be eligible, especially for need-based financial aid. And every year you use new taxes, of course. And asset information has to be updated every year as well.
Thank you.
This might be explained in the form itself. We've only just started it, but you mentioned 529 accounts. Mm-hmm. Is that considered part of the students' funds and not the parents?
It depends.
Oh.
And that's a lot of the answers to these questions. It depends who owns the account. Because sometimes parents will make one 529 account and have 2 students. So that's for 2 students. So you only have to report the portion that is for the student.
Okay.
and it's the owner of the account
The owner of the account reports it as their
as their
funds,
assets. Yes.
not the student's funds. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Could you please tell me about the work-study program at UNC?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Could you please tell me more about the work-study program at
Work
UNC?
study.
Yeah.
Great. I love that question. So work study, for those that don't know, is a federal program. It can also be institutional. We have institutional funds as well that we utilize to cover it, in which students can work while they're in school and then get paid on a biweekly basis. So all students at UNC, if you're eligible for need-based aid, will automatically be awarded work study. It varies on how much need-based aid you're eligible for, how much you get, but you'll know in your aid offer, it will be there. Once that happens, usually the summer before you start, we will send you an email with the platform that we use to hire work-study students with all the positions open, and you apply as if it's a normal job. You will submit a resume. You will do an interview. You will be hired or not hired. You might be asked to come in person and do a practical, things like that. And then once you are hired in the program or in any specific position, you will be paid on a biweekly basis. So like a normal job. UNC does have a very wide availability of options. Like our office have our own work-study students who we absolutely love. But there's also research positions. I was a student at UNC. I did a research assistant at the psychology lab when I was in college back in the day. There's also like in athletics or in the student stores. So it really varies, and there's many, many, many options. Of course, it also depends on the school. Like for example, even if you have a bill, if you're a work-study student, that money goes directly to you, and then you can decide what to do with it. Because our policy or our thought is that you work for this money, it is for you. Other institutions may decide to apply it directly to a bill if you have one pending. So while it may vary from school to school, the criteria is fairly standard across institutions.
Are there other questions?
I have a question about, I know some of the schools, if you make under a certain threshold of your income, your child could attend free tuition. But let's say you set aside money when your kid was 2, and now you have enough money to pay for college, even though you may not have a fancy income. Is that mean that they're not eligible for that program for a free tuition? Like they're going to be forced to use all of their 529, which, theoretically, if they didn't have to, maybe they could have used some of their 529 for graduate school or some other kind of training down the road. Or are they going to be forced to exhaust all of that funding?
As many other things, it will depend, right? So many schools have this kind of programs, and a lot of those criteria are institutional. At least I know UNC has the, Tar Heel guarantee, which is less than $80,000. I would say on that regard, the Tar Heel guarantee was an extension of policies we already had. A lot of the time, students that were inapplicable is simply because we were already covering it. So it didn't make much difference to certain students, right? It is a great expansion of the program, but it was an expansion at the end of the day. It's the same with many other institutions that have similar programs as that. And it does depend on what their criteria are. Some of them say typical assets. So a 529 account may take into account, but the amount of it may not be enough to not make them eligible for it. I will also say this with that respect, because a lot of them are, I think, tuition and fees, which is not a full ride or something like that. It just covers the tuition and fees. You will not have housing cover and things like that. So do look at what those programs are trying to cover to see how much of a difference it will make at the end of the day. And some of them will have assets counted towards them, some of them might not. It varies from institution to institution.
So those are the kind of specific questions you can ask the colleges that you're speaking to, how they handle your unique situation, because each college might handle it slightly differently. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Solar, for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our school counselors for presenting. We appreciate all of you coming tonight and hope you have a great evening. Thank you.